You know how the media just loves to pick apart a big, loud blockbuster failure? The kind of movie that becomes a punchline for weeks? Well, there's a different kind of Hollywood disaster. It's quieter, almost invisible. I'm talking about the films that just slip away. Movies that cost millions, had huge stars, but vanished before most of us even knew they were out. This is the story of Hollywood's silent graveyard. So you gotta ask yourself, is it better for a movie to go down in a spectacular blaze of bad press and online mockery? Or is there a fate that's somehow even worse for something that took years and a ton of money to make? Yep, the answer is silence. That complete, deafening silence of empty theaters, zero buzz on social media, and that chilling realization that nobody cared. Not enough to love it, not even enough to hate watch it. This is the silent flop. And let me tell you, 2025 was a banner year for this whole thing. We saw more of these ghost films than ever. Movies with real budgets and real stars that just, poof, evaporated. So what exactly are we talking about here? Okay, so let's be super clear. A silent flop isn't some tiny indie movie that nobody's heard of. No, this is a studio release with actors you know designed to make a splash. The key thing is that it fails so quietly, its own failure doesn't even make the news. It's just gone. And to really get how this happens, we've got to look at a few case studies from this past year.
Let's start with a classic Hollywood recipe for a hit, the high-concept mashup. You know the drill. Take two super successful movie ideas, smash them together, and just wait for the box office gold to roll in. In theory, it's a can't-miss formula. But in the case of Brideheart, well, it missed. By a lot.
Come on, you have to admit, on paper, this sounds perfect, right? Bridesmaids meets Die Hard? That pitch alone must have gotten the green light in about 5 seconds. Then you get Rebel Wilson and Anna Camp back together from the huge Pitch Perfect franchise, and to top it off, you bring in a veteran action director, Simon West, the guy who made Con Air. It's the perfect formula for a hilarious, action-packed comedy. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? So, the studio puts down a pretty respectable $20 million. It's not a massive blockbuster budget, sure, but it's more than enough to make a solid action comedy. It was a pretty safe bet on what seemed like a sure thing. The stage was set. And the results was an absolute catastrophe. That $20 million investment brought back less than $2 million worldwide. It didn't just lose money, it lost over 90% of its entire budget. That's not a flop, that's a financial black hole. Honestly, the few million it did make probably came from people who thought it was a sequel to Bridesmaids. And the critics? Well, they were not kind. The official consensus on Rotten Tomatoes was this brutal, simple one-liner. The whole movie just came and went so fast that its failure became the most interesting thing about it. And there's our first big lesson. A killer idea on paper means absolutely nothing if the movie itself doesn't work. But what happens when the movie itself isn't the problem? Sometimes a film has all the right stuff, but the way it's sold to the world just sets it up to fail from the start. This is the story of Shadow Force, a movie that was basically doomed by a case of mistaken identity that its own marketing created. I mean, just look at this team. It's a dream lineup. You've got two incredibly charismatic stars in Kerry Washington and Omar Sy. You have a recent Oscar winner, Divine Joy Randolph, in the supporting cast, the always great Mark Strong as the villain, and it's all put together by Joe Carnahan, a director who knows how to make gritty, awesome action flicks. The concept is even a proven winner, a Mr. and Mrs. Smith-style action romance. So, what went wrong? The marketing. It completely fumbled the ball. The title, Shadow Force, sounds like some generic action movie you'd find in the bargain bin. The posters and trailers made it look like a cheap, direct-to-streaming flick, not a big theatrical release. And here's the biggest red flag. The studio didn't even show it to critics beforehand, which basically screams to everyone, we have zero faith in this movie. But here's the wild twist. While the few critics who eventually saw it gave it a terrible 30%, the audience score was a whopping 82%. This means the handful of people who actually went out and bought a ticket, they loved it. This wasn't a bad movie. It was a good movie that was sold so badly that its target audience never even knew it existed. But, you know, a good audience score doesn't pay the bills. The movie cost $40 million and only made $5 million back at the box office. Months later, it quietly showed up on a streaming service and became a hit. It found its audience once it was basically free. It's the perfect example of a studio spending a fortune to make a movie, only to trip at the 1-yard line because they failed to tell anyone what it actually was. It proves that marketing isn't just important, it's everything.
All right, our final category looks at a different kind of failure, the passion project. These are the movies driven by an artist's unique vision or a star's lifelong dream. But as we're about to see with two very different films, personal passion doesn't always translate to people buying tickets.
For decades, Jennifer Lopez has been chasing one thing, an Oscar. And in 2025, she poured everything she had into what she thought was her big moment, a prestige musical drama that was designed from the ground up to win awards. The whole setup was flawless. It had every single ingredient for awards season success. A really complex, dramatic role for its star, a director, Bill Condon, who'd already guided musicals like Chicago and Dreamgirls to Oscar glory. It was based on a famous Tony-winning play. It even got great reviews at the Sundance Film Festival. It was the dictionary definition of Oscar bait.
And then it was released. The movie made an average of just $646 per theater. Let that sink in. That means for most showtimes, there were maybe, 5 or 6 people in the audience. The film cost $35 million and made a catastrophic $1.7 million worldwide. The distributor just completely dropped the ball on the release, with almost no marketing. The Oscar dream turned into a silent box office nightmare.
Now, let's look at another passion project from a filmmaking legend. Ethan Coen, one half of the iconic Coen brothers, is now doing his own thing, making what he calls a lesbian B-movie trilogy. His first shot at it in 2024, Drive Away Dolls, flopped. You'd think maybe he'd adjust, but instead, he doubled down with Honey Don't. It got a standing ovation at the Cannes Film Festival, but as this timeline shows, festival buzz and real-world success can be two very, very different things. And this really gets to the heart of the issue. For decades, the magic of the Coen brothers was all about balance. You had Joel's more grounded style evening out Ethan's weirder ideas. The result was masterpieces like Fargo and The Big Lebowski, strange movies that somehow became huge mainstream hits. But without that balance, Ethan's unfiltered vision, even though it's celebrated by a small festival crowd, has now been a commercial disaster twice in a row. It's a tough lesson that an artist's passion isn't always contagious. So, after digging through these very different but equally silent failures, what have we learned? What are the big takeaways from Hollywood's silent graveyard? It really boils down to 4 crucial lessons. First, star power is not a silver bullet. Kerry Washington, Rebel Wilson, these are huge names, but they can't save a movie that nobody knows about. Second, a killer concept like Brideheart is completely worthless if the final movie isn't good. Third, marketing is absolutely make or break. Shadow Force proved you can have a movie people actually like, but if you sell it like it's cheap and forgettable, that's what it'll become. And finally, passion isn't always contagious. The personal visions that drive artists like Jennifer Lopez and Ethan Coen don't automatically mean a big audience will show up. And that leaves us with one last big question. We are drowning in more movies, TV shows, and content than ever before. In this incredibly crowded world where everyone is fighting for your attention, is it possible that the silent flop isn't the exception anymore, but the new normal? A future where more and more films are just destined to disappear without making a sound.